Welcome to another LifeWriting.com blog talk. With me today is Miss Ticia Sunshine Wilson to discuss a few money-related matters, specifically as it relates to budgeting and saving. Hello again, Leticia.
Good day, Chris. How are you doing today?
Always great, always great.
Uh,
The folks says it's always great to be in the land of the living again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So look, this money thing, we can talk about this in a multitude of ways. There are so many topics and subtopics and just a plethora of things that we can address that so many people need to hear in some form or fashion. But what we're going to do today is just talk, top level. Not going to really drill down a lot, but any specificity that you feel is appropriate as we go along, please add it to the conversation.
Will do.
All right. So I have to ask you too, given your background, I know you toy a lot with, various areas of finance. Off the top, do you want to share anything related to just your background or what have you so passionate about financial matters in themselves?
I think what drew me to become more financially cognizant was just simply looking at my life cycles and counting my coins against my goals in life, and realizing that if I didn't become more financially responsible, I'd never be able to achieve those goals. So that's really the driving motivation behind my conversation in finances.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so many folks, whether they realize it or not, are pretty qualified to discuss and talk about certain financial matters just from their sheer everyday experiences. Lessons that they've learned along the way. I know I can share a multitude of to dos, not to dos, and the list goes on and on. But yeah, thanks for breaking that out like that. So I'd like to know, in terms of budgeting and saving, what would you recommend someone do when it comes to like a one-time expense? How do you prepare for that?
Well, a one-time expense can be a small or large financial goal. So it's really important to assess the timing of this activity based on what your current responsibilities are financially. I kind of lean on this process called the sinking fund, which is it's a savings plan that you come up with. You have a target amount. You break it into equal or random payments based on what your responsibilities are for the week or the month or per paycheck. And based on that amount and your allocation, you start to save. And you can do it electronically, or you can break it out and actually do a cash base. A lot of people like to do what they call the cash envelope system, which was, I guess, introduced by Dave Ramsey. I actually was doing this system before I knew anything about Dave Ramsey, but apparently someone in my life probably was aware of the system and taught it to me without, introducing who he was. So it was really awesome later on as I started, doing my own research and looking at some of our financial gurus uh, to learn that this was his system. And it actually is quite effective. I have a number of sinking funds, and I can tell you each and every time I achieve that dollar amount that I've spent for, it's just an awesome feeling because it's literally money that you save for and you don't feel the pain of it leaving your wallet.
Absolutely.
Prepared for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dave Ramsey, I'm familiar with him. Definitely familiar with him. There's a few others out there, but yeah, the sinking funds and just the way you laid that out, I think it should be received quite well. And actually, you touched on a couple things in there with respect to the tracking of the funds. I wanted to ask you that, how do you track, your budget? You just touched on that. Would you like to expand on that in any way?
Absolutely. So I am a pen and paper type of woman.
Same
Um,
here.
Although we have, a plethora of gadgets, I do during the day record things in my phone, but at the end of the day, at the end of the week, when it's time to actually reflect on my budget, um, that I prepared the month prior, and I'm filling in all the accurate numbers of what I actually spent. That's where I'm recording and tracking my expenses, tracking my income, tracking debt, and also tracking what those savings goals are, what the sinking funds goals are. So it's super important to find your own system that works for you. There's a number of tools on the internet, whatever search you use, you literally can put in budgeting. You're looking for a budgeting template or a expense tracker, and I'm going to tell you, everybody that pretty much teaches on budgeting and finance has some form of a tracking template. So it's super easy to get into this method of tracking your expenses.
I like it. I like it. Makes sense to me. And you mentioned the tracking of debt. Now, of course, that's another conversation as well. But debt is usually synonymous with it has a negative connotation, right? But so many folks don't understand, that it can be leveraged in a way that it could be extremely positive and beneficial for you. But again, not to delve into that. That's definitely, like I said, a conversation for another time. But again, I just wanted to quickly put that out there. Folks internalize debt in such a negative way sometimes.
And
But
if I can just say this, excuse me.
no, please,
If
please.
you learn to track your debt and you're aware of the annual percentage rates of that
Yes.
debt, the compound interest, actually, you can increase your credit score if that's your goal. When you learn how to pay your debt off prior to the due date and you make that extra payment, if your goal is to have a high credit score, that's how you do it. You got to track that debt.
That's how you do it.
Just be out here making random payments, not knowing if that payment is really going to impact your credit report.
That wholeheartedly agree. And Leticia, you just touched on something else very important. Of course, that credit aspect of everything, that credit score. And again, as I said initially, there's so many layers you could peel back, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to money matters, the credit, FICO score, I think I was probably in my mid-20s. I was having this conversation with some military buddies, and there were several guys within that little circle who did not know what I was referring to when I mentioned FICA. And that was just so alarming to me, so eye-opening, right? And again, we were all pretty much in our mid-20s, early to mid-20s. And I just thought that was so fascinating that, folks were not aware of what that acronym that's so important meant at that point in their lives. So thanks for mentioning that credit aspect. Would you like to expand on that in any way? Like I know I just said that's a conversation for another day, but anything else you want to add?
I'll just add, if you're a parent of a young teenager, it's so important to have that conversation early on,
Yes.
especially if you're going to send them to college, because I am a victim of that whole sign up for a credit card, get a t-shirt.
Same here.
Had no idea what I was doing to my credit history. And I was one of those children where I had a parental figure that set up a credit card for me prior to me going off to college, because
See that's it.
it's important for me to establish my credit.
That's it. And see, we have a 17-year-old daughter. right? She'll be 18 this year, heading to college. Right, time flies, right? And we're steadily trying to again equip her and have her in the mindset of money, not make it possessing over it as it's the end all to be all in your life, but pretty much everything is tied to money and economics in some way, right?
Yes.
So that personal, financial planning and the budgeting and saving, of course, as we're talking about now, we started to share and instill, those thoughts, those concepts, those all of those matters in her mind at a very early age, very
Absolutely.
early age.
And
So
honestly speaking, if
yes.
you can avoid having and needing a credit card, because that's ultimately the goal, is to be debt
Mm,
free, to have
yes.
a positive cash flow where you owe no one. So if you can go into life as a young adult staying debt free without leaning on a credit card, that's absolutely what I would encourage everyone to.
Great, great points. Great points. And again, of course I totally agree with you. So when it comes to, we just mentioned there's so many facets to it. When it comes to prioritizing, versus paying down debt. I know you just said, it's ideal. The most ideal situation is to stay away from it altogether. But
Yes.
if you do, because things happen, right? Unexpected things happen. And you want to be in a place to make sure that you are giving each and every element is proper diligence, if you will. How would you suggest folks prioritize, the budgeting and saving, vice paying down debt?
So again, it goes back to being organized first and
Mm,
foremost. So most of us know what our paycheck is going to be before it arrives. So
right.
sit down with yourself, have a date, a come to Jesus moment, what I call it, every month. But have a date with yourself. Record your estimated income, record your fixed expenses, which could be your mortgage, your HOA, your rent, your car payment, your insurance payment, and then you have your variable expenses, which would be your utilities, maybe even your cell phone or any type of subscriptions or something like that, because those are expenses that can fluctuate. So you're going to categorize those expenses, and then you're going to capture what your debt is. And what I look at as debt is the credit card payments. You might also put your car payment there as well, depending on how you approach paying off your car. No, if you have one, your student loan. So that's going to be another category. And then again, you have your category with your sinking funds and also
Uh-huh.
savings. But here's the thing,
Uh-huh.
you need to pay yourself first.
First.
So after you've recorded, all of these items in each one of these categories, then you need to reflect on how much money does it realistically take me to live off of. So we're looking at your dining expenses. We're looking at what your grocery bill is,
Mm,
gasoline, what your grooming bill is, what your medical expenses may be for
right.
the for me, I'm in a sorority. So what do those expenses look like for the month? Is there any type of workshops that I want to pay for? Also, I'm also going to be saving throughout the year for my annual due. So
There
these
we
are
go.
things that are important to me. And when I get my paycheck, I'm going to plan accordingly to pay myself first and then pay everybody else. So that's my bi-weekly or bi-monthly budget
Yeah.
I come up with. So I look at my income, I take my money out for my budget for my personal use. I put that money. I actually draw that money from the bank and put it in my cash envelopes in my wallet. And then I do my electronic transfers for my sinking funds and my savings challenges. And then I cut the check for all, any of the bills that I owe, fixed and variable. So I hope I didn't exasperate that point, but that's how I approach it.
Well, I mean, no, seriously, we all know in terms of exasperating anything that's money related is not really possible. There's so much information out there, so many things to be cognizant of when it comes to money matters. I mean, look, again, we talked about it before. We can literally talk for days on end about
Yeah.
anything related to finances. So yeah, anyway, all of that information is of course greatly appreciated. So everything you just shared, we have couples out there, right? And married people and all this different stuff. All of those things that you mentioned, we have two people in the fold, right? How would you suggest, and I don't know, this is kind of a loaded question, but how would you suggest couples, prepare for budgeting and saving?
I'm taking a deep breath on this one because I
I
know
know, I know.
going to agree with me on this. But trust me, I know what I'm talking about.
Hey,
What I'm about to tell you.
well, and that's the thing. There are a multitude of perspectives out there, but guess what? Miss Ticia Sunshine is on the show today. So go right ahead.
So listen, you made a commitment to your spouse, which means you have a strong foundation of trust, understanding, and prayerfully you all are on the same page financially. However, each person probably has different goals, different spending habits, and in order to avoid major upset, hurt, and pain down the road, it is important to maintain your individual checking or savings account and also have a joint checking and savings account. So, what I am recommending is that as a family, you have an account that pays for your mortgage, your car notes, insurances. But as it pertains to your activities and goals,
Mhm.
because a man may want to go to football, basketball, the local bar to catch, brews with the boys or something like that, or he.
I know many women out there that do those things as well.
Oh yes,
Okay.
but I was getting to
No,
that. you
I'm
know,
just throwing a bone messing with you.
I'm just saying, and then women may prioritize their time with going to the wineries with their girlfriends and spa days and things of that sort.
Absolutely.
So it's important to still have your own identity as far as spending and what you feel is important. But
Right.
it all starts with a conversation and understanding with your spouse. Honey, this is
Indeed.
what is important to me and what I would like to allocate monthly to these activities. And you agree upon it. And guess what? When it's in your account, that's the money you spend. But first and foremost, you take care of home collectively. You come
Collecting.
together, you make, I'm not going to say it has to be right down the middle because some men are traditional, some women are non-traditional,
Right.
and roles have changed. So whoever is the breadwinner or makes the majority, maybe they're going to be the ones that carry the larger bills. But either way, both spouses are adding to that joint account to ensure that the household and the children are covered. And then you have your individual accounts to, manage your me time money.
Hey, look, I must say, I virtually wholeheartedly agree with everything you just shared. And how you laid that out is even more important. And I know many couples can, relate to what I'm about to say. The older you get and you've established certain things and you find that mate or you get married later in life, I found it may be very advantageous for you to facilitate your finances as you just so eloquently laid that out. And I've spoken with a multitude of people who again facilitate their personal household family income matters and budgeting and spending matters in that same light. And it works for them. And I do want to foot stump that. At the end of the day, it's whatever works for the couple. We know that. But to your point, a lot of us have experience, right? Having undergone, overcame, whatever, certain elements of that. And, statistics may actually show and may actually support exactly what we're saying and how you just laid that out.
Right.
So, yeah, thanks so much for presenting it in the light that you did. So, I always say it's a pleasure to, know and have and surround yourself with people like you, people who have been there, done that kind of thing, right? And can personally attest to some of these things to substantiate, the points that you made. So lastly, from a budgeting and saving perspective, some folks have, inconsistent incomes, it's a little volatile given their profession, their work or what have you. And you kind of touched on this earlier with your tracking sheet and, being fully aware where things are. But do you want to touch on that as it relates to inconsistent incomes?
Absolutely. Just because you have an inconsistent income doesn't mean that you can't be a planner with your finances. Just means you need to be a bit more savvy. And sometimes you need to diversify what you touch daily. You might need a couple more hustles to make sure that you're not coming up short. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to just being financially responsible, not living above your means, and again, planning ahead. If you know your income is volatile, you can't afford to live paycheck to paycheck. You definitely need to have reserves, a nest egg, and your emergency fund. Because the month that that check is a little bit short, guess what? You have an emergency fund to cover not your extracurricular activities, but cover those fixed expenses and
Right.
also those variable expenses that might be a little higher than normal. So, case in point, we all know the electric bill goes up in the summertime. So,
Mhm.
$50 that you're paying in the wintertime might double or triple. Be
Right.
prepared for that. Because at the end of the day, your bills are no one else's problem but your own. So
No.
absolutely
Yeah.
need to be prepared
Yes.
for the shift.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. Thanks again for breaking that out like you did. Yeah. Look, as always, this is your second time on the show engaging in, various topics, right? I always appreciate it. And having, again, circling yourself with folks, who are knowledgeable in various areas who can add real time value to, your life, what you're doing, what you may be about to encounter unbeknownst to you, right? Information like this firsthand is so informative and inspiring at the same time. At least for me, it is. So I thank you as always for just doing your part to make, not to sound corny, just to make where we are and where we live such a better place. And thanks so much for sharing this information.
Yes.
And
So
yeah, with that, I want you to stand by because we're going to have some future conversations, as we said earlier,
yeah,
right? So yeah, just continue to do what you're doing, and I am going to continue to push folks your way, especially as it relates to your subject matter expertise, I should say.
absolutely.
Right? All right. Thanks again, Leticia. You have a good one. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And we discussed a few things, as you saw, from budgeting and savings. And the conversation actually went into a couple other directions that are financially related. So, first and foremost, thanks for your support. Take care out there and stick around. There's so much more to come here at lifewriting.com.